Hello, School Transportation Nation. Want to welcome you back to the podcast. Guess what? This episode is sponsored by Transfinder, the leader in school bus routing software. I'm Tony Corpin, publisher, president of School Transportation News. I'll be talking to Jeff Cassel, president of the School Bus Safety Company, all about the upcoming ELDT deadline for driver training. You got to listen. Great information you have to have. And we are super excited to have our excellent co-host, Miss Taylor Hannon. Welcome, Taylor.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. Tony, did you know it's our 70th episode?
I did not know that. I feel like that's a lot of hours of podcasting, but it's been a great ride. I mean, started back in March of 2020, and we haven't looked back. It's been an ongoing thing. I think the school transportation industry has looked forward to us keeping them up to date. I feel like the content is pivoting a bit. We were like knee deep in COVID, and now we are transitioning, right? Last week we talked to BYD, and you had talked to Twin Rivers, and it was a really interesting conversation about school bus electrification. So I think we're going to see more and more topics come up that are less COVID related and much more kind of industry related. And it kind of feels good to get back to the topics at hand. I feel like at some point I was just getting sick of talking about COVID and dealing with it. It's draining almost, right?
I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been 70 weeks, right, since we were first shut down because of COVID. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh my gosh, 70 weeks.
Right. And we were on literally the cusp of doing the Transporting Students with Disabilities conference, right? It was like mid-March, and we were like, go, no go, should we do it? And here we are. We've rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled. And finally, I think we're going to make this one happen in November 17th through 22, right? That kind of window of time, TSD conference, it's happening. I'm ready. In-person conferences, they're coming back. I'm hearing from a lot of my friends in the school transportation community. They're at the Florida State Show, FAPT. They're at Georgia's show. They're in Iowa. They're in Illinois. They're in Ohio. I just got back myself from the Texas State Pupil Transportation Conference down in Houston in the Woodlands. Beautiful area. The folks at CAPT, they do an amazing job. Kane Smith, who's the president down there, he always puts on a great show, as well as Marissa Weisinger. We really appreciate those guys. Texas is always represents with one of the absolute best state conferences around. So I really enjoy their content, good trade show. So it's great seeing people again and networking. It's just something I miss so much as part of my life in school transportation. And it gets me excited to do our shows, STN Expo Indianapolis, October 1st through the 5th, as well as STN Expo Reno, December 4th through the 9th. Those places are those are the spots where we get everyone together and we have some fun and we do a lot of learning and networking. And if you guys are interested in learning more about that, stnexpo.com is where you can find out all that information. And then on the stnonline.com website, we've got lots of stories up under our events section about the latest things happening out there in the industry. So I don't know, but what about you, Taylor? Are you excited to get back to live events?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. And fall is definitely going to be a busy one. Like you said, conferences are ramping back up. The National Association of State Directors of Pupil Transportation Services did announce last week that their annual conference is coming back this year. They were supposed to hold it in conjunction with the National Association of Pupil Transportation, November 6th through 10th in Grand Rapids, Michigan. However, NAPT canceled its conference in early May. So we've kind of been waiting to see what NASDP is going to do. But last week, they announced that they're going to return to Arlington, Virginia, November 4th through 9th this year. And the event will be at the Ritz-Carlton Pentagon City. So that's going to be a few blocks from the DoubleTree that hosted the 2019 NASDP's annual conference. Registration information as well as scholarship opportunities are forthcoming. But it's so great to hear that these conferences are coming back and people have these opportunities to travel again and see their friends and see what's been working, what hasn't been, what's been going on these past, 70 weeks, right?
Yeah, it's exciting. NASDIPS always puts on a great event, a very legislative discussions, right? And I think we are knee deep in legislative topics lately, Taylor. I feel like the STN team has been covering a lot of new acts or bills or federal proposals. You want to kind of give us a quick update on where we stand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so let's talk about the most recent one. The Federal School Bus Stop Act was included in the House and Senate transportation reauthorization bills. And so the Stop Act would essentially create a comprehensive federal program for preventing motorists from illegally passing school buses. The U.S. Department of Transportation would be required to review illegal passing laws, penalties, and levels of enforcement in all 50 states, as well as various technologies and driver education materials. It would then make recommendations on best practices and the most effective approaches. And then the DOT would also implement a public safety messaging campaign. So the National School Transportation Association actually praised this STOP Act. It's being included in the House and Senate final versions of the $305.5 billion Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. So the bill was introduced in March, definitely making some headway there. Lots of good things happening. I think having the STOP Act pass would be huge. Having some sort of recommended best practices would greatly help the school bus industry.
So, Taylor, our friends at Transfinder want to ask our listeners a big question, and they want to know, does your district still have CARES Act funding available? If so, the time is ticking to use those funds on technology that could help you solve your challenges that you face as a result of the pandemic, right? Maybe you haven't had a chance to kind of change up your routes. Maybe you have. Start up AB routing to adjust to social distance requirements, or your routers work from home and need to access a browser-based routing solution. Transfinder has the solution you need to overcome those challenges and more. Become a transportation hero with a browser-based routing solution. RouteFinder Plus and StopFinder Parent app are a great combo. Let Transfinder help take attendance, student tracking, provide cloud hosting, and improve driver navigation, parent communication. They've got it all. Plus, you could get everything covered by CARES Act funding. Give them a call at 800-373-3608 or email getplus@transfinder.com to learn more. Don't forget to put STN podcast in the subject line. Taylor, what other legislative things are going on out there? Keep giving us those updates.
So, Tony, the long awaited CERTS Act program application is finally open. For those that need a reminder, CERTS is the Coronavirus Economic Relief for Transportation Services program, and it was passed with the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 6 months ago. Okay, this was passed back in December. The motor coach, school bus, passenger vessel, and pilot vessel companies are finally seeing relief funds coming. The program provides up to $2 billion in non-competitive grants to eligible companies, but this means, the Treasury Department is going to determine the amount of awards based on the 2019 tax year. So they're kind of determining, what companies get what, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this is much needed support for our private businesses that are supporting student transportation. They have literally taken the brunt of this pandemic. Some have been paid, some haven't been paid. They've been in partial payments. It is very hard to operate a business when you anticipated certain revenue and you're still trying to maintain your staff and provide a high level of service and a high quality. So this, it's a long time coming. They have been screaming for this money to be released, and I'm so excited that it finally has been. So hopefully that provides a nice infusion of capital and to our private operators. And then that kind of matriculates through the system down to our suppliers. And, it helps everybody kind of get a better product in the end. And ultimately, we're razor focused on keeping kids safe because ultimately it's about the kids.
Yeah. And we'll actually see how much this $2 billion can be stretched. There's over 5,000 companies that are eligible for this. So it'll be interesting to see how much per industry is given. And, I know the school bus industry alone has lost up to $8 billion during COVID. So definitely a lot of money out there, but we'll see how it'll be transferred to the different companies. The application is open, and it's only open until July 19th. So go and apply for that. There's an article up at stnonline.com that has a link to the application process. So definitely check it out. It outlines the eligibility.
So Taylor, I've been hearing a lot of buzz lately about student Wi-Fi. There's this rumor going around you can get all your Wi-Fi paid for by this new FCC arrangement. Can you give us a little detail on that? Because I'm sure a lot of people are like, wait, I can get Wi-Fi on my school buses and all of it gets reimbursed? How does that work?
So another very exciting application that actually opens today for everyone listening on June 29th. But this one is for supporting the purchase of school bus Wi-Fi hotspots. The Federal Communications Commission announced that schools and libraries can begin to file applications for the $7.17 billion Emergency Connectivity Fund. So the application filing window will run from June 29th to August 13th. Funds can support purchases for the 2021-2022 school year. So definitely a way for school districts to reach out, apply, and get some Wi-Fi hotspots for their school buses.
I'm telling you, that's a crazy amount of money, $7.17 billion. I mean, guys, if you hadn't invested in Wi-Fi on your buses, this is a golden opportunity to leverage an amazing pot of money to be able to facilitate this technology on your vehicles. I highly recommend you do your homework and learn more about this and apply, because there's a limited amount of time, right? You don't drag your feet because Taylor, when does the application close? Is it 45 days? Is that what I read?
It is 45 days. So it will close on August 13th.
All right, so August 13th, guys, do not procrastinate. Get on it. Super exciting stuff there, outfitting school buses with Wi-Fi, addressing that kind of loss of learning, treating the school bus as an extension of the classroom. We always talk about it. We preach it. Here's your opportunity to actually execute it. It is a fabulous program. I cannot believe that they're offering this. This is great.
Yeah.
So shifting gears, Taylor, let's talk a little bit about driver training, ELDT. There's a lot of discussion these days about what kind of things are coming down the pipeline that you have to be ready for. And there's deadlines out into the future, which we will wait until the absolute last second before we comply to deadlines. But do you want to kind of give everybody an update on the latest and greatest with that?
Well, Tony, I think Jeff Cassel with the school bus safety company, who you'll be talking to shortly, is probably better and more qualified to answer those questions. But what I can tell you is that it's definitely something that people are talking about. There's a lot of buzz around this, driver training. What are the requirements? Do we even have enough drivers to train, right? That's the main question. So a school bus driver in Central California, her name is Donna Lopez. She opened up her own CDL driver training facility after hearing of at least 27 open driver positions in just her, little area. Her own school district that she retired from as a school bus driver in March of 2020, Visalia Unified School District, is expected to have 20 openings by just the start of the next school year. So, that's crazy. That's huge. And so she's trying to do her part, and instead of just sitting back and watching this happen, she's going to be flexible and help potential applicants obtain their CDL. I'm definitely hoping to have her on an upcoming podcast episode. So great things are definitely happening, and I'm really excited to hear what Jeff has to say to shine a little bit of light on this and to provide insight into this topic a little bit more.
Well, I want to welcome to the School Transportation Nation stage Mr. Jeff Cassel, president of the School Bus Safety Company. Jeff, thanks for coming out.
You're welcome.
So glad to have you. So Jeff is an expert on driver training. And one thing that we've been talking a lot about lately is MAP 21. That may sound vaguely familiar to our audience because it was a deadline that was supposed to take place prior. and it kept getting moved back and moved back and moved back. And then COVID happens and it gets moved back again. So I wanted to bring Jeff on to talk a little bit about MAP 21 and ELDT and kind of what that means to you guys, School Transportation Nation. So Jeff, why is this important to school transportation professionals?
Because if they don't follow these new federal regulations, they will no longer be able to train school bus drivers after February the 7th, 2022. So if they don't comply with these regulations, they won't be able to train any new drivers.
So how does one become compliant, Jeff?
Well, there are two sides to it. Entry-level driver training called ELDT, where the federal government have listed 303 practices that you must teach trainee school bus drivers after February the 7th, 2022. So you need to look at what you train today, compare it to what they want, and anything you're missing, you've got to add it. And so that's the first half, entry-level driver training, that you meet these training requirements. The second part is called Trainer Provider Registry. They say it will be ready this summer, but in this summer, whatever that means, the federal government will have a website open where each location who trains drivers has to go in and fill in the information for their location and submit it to the federal government. The federal government will send back a approved notice and a unique location training number. And whenever you train drivers in the future, you can only do that because you're going to submit the information on that person. Let's say you train John Doe, they've done the theory, they've done the behind the wheel. You're going to go into the federal website, key in what you've trained, who it is, hit enter, and only then will that person be able to get a license from their local DMV.
So Jeff, obviously you're well aware that this has been delayed multiple times. And here we are with the February 2022 deadline. I mean, do you think it's going to get delayed again? People shouldn't procrastinate, right? Is it's not going back? They've moved it enough.
Correct. And in fact, only a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed two senior executives from FMCSA. And my second question to them was, is there any chance of this being delayed again? They said, absolutely no chance. It's under high scrutiny from both the Senate and Congress because this has been going for years and they have no ability to delay it again. It will go ahead.
So what are kind of the next steps that you would recommend, Jeff? Obviously, you talked about reviewing 330 training elements. I mean, that sounds like a daunting task to go line by line and then have to implement something to teach our driver. I mean, what's the easiest path forward with this?
Well, when you read the law on the federal website, it's written in paragraphs and lots of pages of them. But each paragraph often covers 6, 7, 8 different practices. So we took an Excel spreadsheet and we listed every one of those practices, and it's 303, not 330, as you said. 303 is enough, Tony. We listed all these 303 practices, and then we went to our own driver training course and said, do we teach this? Yes or no? And if we do, where is it? And when we did that, we noticed there were 27 practices that we did not train that were required in the 303. We trained all the other ones. So then we created a supplemental training program for those 303. So one way or another, this is what school districts or contractors are going to have to do. List the required practices, look what they train today, identify what they don't train, and then add it to their training. And to give you some examples of what I didn't have in my course, I didn't cover fueling. I didn't cover night driving. I didn't cover hours of service. But now you're required to teach these things. And as I say, there were 27 things I didn't teach in my course. I now do. So now my course is fully compliant.
And can you expand a little more on your course for the people that don't know what School Bus Safety Company is and does?
Sure. We've been around for 12 years now. I was the VP Risk Manager for Laidlaw, and at Laidlaw, we hired an outside top-level company to help us create all our training courses. We had what we know was the best training in the industry. So when I left Laidlaw, after First Group bought the company, I created the School Bus Safety Company with the idea of I would create world-class training courses for school bus drivers that nobody else could afford to do on their own. The law of large numbers, that we invested a lot of money, created these programs, and now we sell them to school districts and contractors, and we have over 3,000 school districts, and 7 of the 10 largest contractors use our school bus driver training courses at every location. And what we've told these people is well before February 7th of next year, they'll be receiving a supplemental disc for the people who already had my course that will cover these 27 items, so they'll be 100% in compliant. Anyone who's bought the course in the last year already has the supplemental disc included.
How do you prove that you are compliant, that you've done your due diligence with the training? Who manages that? Who measures that? What's the process there? Because that's
great question.
It feels like so big. What? It doesn't make sense to me how you would get that done.
There's a lot of honesty and trust in this because there aren't the people to measure, monitor, and rule. Once you submit on the trainer provider registry the way you're going to train, you're expected to do what you say. Now, there's one thing of not doing something. There's another thing when you say you're doing it and you're not doing it. And under the trainer provider registry, your senior executives are going to have to affirm that you are training in accordance with the regulations, and they will be held accountable to that. At the moment, they don't have a process to come out and audit and check on you. They're expecting you to follow the regulations. And that, Tony, leads to another interesting subject. While they tell you a subject you will teach on, they don't tell you what you will teach on that subject, how long you will teach it for, to what depth. That's all left up to you. And you could be, in theory, very loosey-goosey. Like on fueling, you could just teach, don't fuel in enclosed spaces and don't smoke. Next subject. And argue, I taught fueling. Or you could go a little deeper than that. And so, as I say, a lot of it's left up to the opinion and abilities of the place. So a lot of trust. But with the trainer provider registry, it's not complicated information. You'll explain where you do your training, under what type, how long you train for. So, and this is another confusing topic. Trainers want to know, how do they become certified? They don't. The location becomes certified. Well, in the location certifying itself, it will submit information that its trainers meet the requirements.
That's very interesting. I guess when I look at it from a big picture standpoint, if I'm a director of a district, and let's just say I don't end up making it by the deadline, what are the consequences of that?
Oh, very simple. Your drivers won't be licensed.
Got it. The DMV will not license the driver at that point.
Absolutely. And this is what's delayed it, Tony. Think how complicated this is. There are 50 states in America, which you know better than I. Each state is required to create a web-based program that will link to the federal database so that when the information is keyed in at the location into the federal web base, that federal database will then feed it to the DMV in your state so that when you walk in DMV and say, I've done all my training, my name's Tony Corbin, they can look you up, here's my driving license and say, yep, I can see you've done it all. Just imagine how complex it is creating 50 such communication programs. And that's part of what's been delaying it.
Got it. Well, I mean, I think it comes back to just the importance of not procrastinating on this. MAP 21 is a really important thing for you guys to keep your eye on and make sure that you're doing your due diligence, because we need our drivers ready and able to drive school buses, because you don't want your fleet to be down. The consequences of that sound pretty dire, Jeff, if they don't get it done. So, I want to put that out there. There is a real sense of urgency here not to delay too much, because the deadline's coming and it's likely not getting pushed back based on what Jeff's just said. So very interesting stuff. Jeff, if our listeners want to reach out to you and find out more about your training program, where do they go?
Our number is 1-866-275-7272. That's 1-866-275-7272. Or go to our website at www.schoolbussafetyco.com. We have written an information bulletin that we'll provide for free on exactly what you have to do and how you have to do it. And so, as I say, contact us and we'll email a copy of that to you, because don't make a mistake here. This is the biggest change in commercial licensing and commercial driving in 40 years. The last major change was the introduction of the CDL license. Nothing even close to what's now about to take place has been done. It is huge. It does need us to do it and get on with it. But to be honest, it's not really that difficult. All you got to do is make sure you're training in the 303 practices, do the right thing, which most of us do in school busing, if not everybody now, because we care about the kids, and key the information into the TPR, the trainer provider registry. And so, okay, the whole idea of this is overriding the state requirements. Some states like California have very strict requirements. There are still some additional subjects for them to add, and some of the other states have fairly minimal. Now there's one set of federal minimum requirements, end of story. If a state has anything above or more than the feds, they can add it, but they can't take away. These federal requirements now apply to everybody with one standard. And again, don't feel bad about it. This doesn't only apply to school busing, it applies to every tractor trailer training place, every transit, paratransit, motor coach training place. All commercial vehicles who need a CDL license must meet these new requirements.
Great information, Jeff. Thanks for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate you.
So, as I say, if I can help anybody, get in touch with us. We've been studying this for 2 years. We went to Washington. We met with the people who wrote all the regulations because they are difficult to understand. And we want to help the industry go to a whole new level.
Excellent. Special thank you to Miss Taylor Hannon, Jeff Cassel for being on the podcast today, sharing their insights, thoughts, news updates. We couldn't do it without you guys. You know who couldn't do it without? Transfinder, our episode sponsor. We appreciate you, Transfinder. Thank you for participating and supporting this podcast. Also, guys, visit stnonline.com for everything you need to know about the school transportation industry for tips, analysis, breaking news, legislative updates. We've got it all. Be sure also to check out the website, stnexpo.com, for all our upcoming fall conferences. We've got the training, the networking, the content, community, commerce, everything you guys want. We've got it for you, so be sure and check that out. Hey, don't forget, share this podcast with all the friends in your school transportation community. Be sure and get the word out about the School Transportation Nation. You can subscribe, stream, listen to podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, in the end, we love you, School Transportation Nation. We can't wait to see you next week. Have a good one.